Hey guys, Mobile Geezer, and I'm back with another vulnerability. As you can tell from my background, this time it's for the Macbooks. And there's an unpatchable vulnerability in the M1, M2, and M3 MacBook chips. So this was on Tom's guide. It's from 2 days ago. So let's go share screen and I'll show you what it's all about.
Let's do this!
So as I said, this was on Tom's guide from 2 days ago. Unpatchable vulnerability discovered in Apple M1, M2, and M3 chips. What you need to know by Anthony Spadafora, the guy who usually lets us know about these things, thank goodness. New side channel attack breaks encryption on Apple Silicon. So let's drop this into reader view. Researchers have discovered a new unpatchable security flaw that can break encryption on the best MacBooks if exploited by an attacker. Now, before we go any further, because that sounds awfully bad, you should know the last heading before the last paragraph in this article says why you shouldn't be too worried. So I just wanted to let you know about that so nobody freaks out over it. But as reported by 9 to 5 Mac, this recently discovered vulnerability affects every Mac running Apple Silicon, including the company's M1, M2, and M3 chips. To make matters worse, the flaw is present in the architecture of these chips, which means there's no way for Apple to fix it outright. In other words, it's embedded. Instead, any fixes will need to be made before the iPhone maker releases its M4 chips later this year. Just like with last year's eye leakage attack, this flaw is also a side channel that can allow for the end-to-end keys used in encryption to be extracted by an attacker given the right circumstances. And as I've told you before, when I was a programmer, I used to work on encryption keys. And yes, if you have both ends of the encryption, you can pretty much get what you want. Fortunately, though, exploiting this vulnerability is fairly difficult, that's good, for an attacker, as doing so can take a considerable amount of time. Whether you have one of Apple's recently released MacBook Air M3 models or an older MacBook Pro with an M1 chip, which from back in 2020, which is what I have, here's everything you need to know about this unpatchable security flaw, along with a few tips on how to protect yourself. Exploiting this vulnerability using GoFetch. The new vulnerability was discovered by a team of 7 academic researchers from universities across the U.S. who detailed their findings in a research paper about micro-architectural side channel attacks. To show how this flaw could be exploited by attackers, they created an app called GoFetch, which doesn't require root access according to Ars Technica. Instead, it only requires the same user privileges used by most third-party Mac apps, so they made it easy for themselves. For those unfamiliar with Apple's M-series chips, they are all divided into clusters which house their different cores. If the GoFetch app and the cryptography app being targeted by an attacker are running on the same performance cluster, GoFetch will be able to mine enough secrets to leak a secret key. It's all a bit technical. I suggest reading Ars Technica's report for a deeper dive, but essentially, this unpatchable vulnerability is bad news for Apple, but it likely won't affect you in nearly the same way that the Meltdown and Spectre flaws did for PC users. Well, that's good, I guess. Patching will have a hit on performance. Since this flaw exists in Apple's chips themselves, like I said, embedded, and not in its software, patching it won't be possible. The iPhone maker would instead have to release brand new chips to completely fix it. Since the vulnerability is unpatchable, The researchers who discovered it suggest that the best Apple could do is to implement workarounds to address it in the company's M1, M2, and M3 chips. So, of course, it would slow everything down. These workarounds would be on the software side, and cryptographic software developers would need to add a mitigation like ciphertext blinding, which adds or removes masks to sensitive values, like the ones used in encryption keys, before/after they are stored to or loaded from memory. So they design very much like encryption keys are designed. The big problem here, though, is that implementing something like this would result in a serious hit on performance. It makes sense, which is the last thing most Apple users would want. Thankfully, though, exploiting this vulnerability isn't that easy to do. Well, that's good. That's why we got to the next line, why you shouldn't be too worried. In order to use this unpatchable vulnerability in one of their attacks, a hacker would first need to trick an unsuspecting Mac user into installing a malicious app on their computer. So at least if you don't take the bait, they can use it. Apple blocks unsigned apps by default in macOS with Gatekeeper, which would make installing the malicious app needed to pull off an attack much more difficult. From here, this attack takes quite a bit of time to be carried out. In fact, during the tests, the researchers noted that it took anywhere from close to an hour to 10 hours to do so, during which time the malicious app would need to be running continuously. So yeah, I don't think you have to worry about it too much then. While we haven't heard anything from Apple regarding this unpatchable vulnerability yet, we'll update this piece when and if we do. Until then, the researchers recommend keeping all of the software on your Apple Silicon-powered Macs up to date and installing regular updates from Apple as soon as they become available. So just wanted to let you guys know about that one, as I usually do. And like I said, this just came out 2 days ago. And of course, I'll leave a link to the article in the description. So as always, comments are welcome. Thanks for watching. And remember, if you like my content, please share the videos with friends, family, or whomever you think might be interested. Subscribe if you haven't already done so, and be sure to click the notification bell so you don't miss any future videos that I upload. And please hit the thumbs up, as it does help with the algorithm. And let's always remember, we all do better when we love each other. Yeah.